Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football is brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors, O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana, Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, and WAND.
Welcome to Inside the Illini, Big Ten Football, as confidence starts growing in Champaign-Urbana. I'm Matt Loveless here at Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, coming off a dominating Week 5 performance, Game 4 for the Illini against Miami of Ohio. They're now 3-1. Over the next hour, we'll take a look at the game. We'll take a look at the next opponent, which is Nebraska, a game that starts in just about an hour. And, of course, get a look at the Big Ten schedule, all conference games in the Big Ten this week. And, of course, we'll also hear from Bo Pelini's Cornhuskers to see about the matchup as well. Joining me at the desk, as usual, Matt Daniels back for the News-Gazette representation, and Steve Kelly of Sports Talk 1400. Guys, 3-1. Let's just get your initial thoughts as we head into conference season. What do you think of this team?
I don't think anyone would have thought 3-1 coming into the year. I know they, I believe 2-2 was kind of a good barometer for where they'd be at, but the 3-1s exceeded all expectations. I mean, the offense has also exceeded all expectations. Bill Cubitt could probably be elected mayor in Champaign-Urbana, Danville, anywhere around here, just with the ingenuity he's shown on offense this year.
And I don't think it's just that they've won, it's how they've won these games, Steve.
They put people away, with the exception of the SIU game. They let them back in the game, but the games that they needed to win, they did it definitively in a fashion that they hadn't done in the past, and especially this last week. Miami, Ohio was not very good, but they didn't let them stay in the game, didn't let them get in the game.
A question I wanted to wait to ask again until they got to this 3-win mark, but we don't have to be mathematicians to know that that's halfway to a bowl game. Do we see 3 wins in the Big Ten schedule now that you've seen how this team is constructed?
I mean, that's the big question surrounding this team now. Can they get to 6-6 or 7-5 or even 8-4? 3 wins is going to be hard to come by, especially with the schedule they have this month, starting today at Nebraska. Then bye week, and Wisconsin comes here for a night game, which if they beat Nebraska, I'd imagine it'd be close to a near sellout there at Memorial Stadium here in Champaign. But 6-6 is what they're striving for right now.
Steve, do you see 3 wins?
If they get a win today, I'd say they're on a good roll to get 3 wins. There's no guarantee even at that. But if they could go into Lincoln today and really pull what would be a major upset, Nebraska's a little bit down. We get that. We'll talk more about that as we move along. But if they could do that, yes, I'd say yes, but I'm not ready to say that yet.
Well, see, if I'm looking down at the schedule, I see games like Purdue. I think at this point in the season, I'd be confident in saying Illinois is going to win that game. I think they could win the game in Indiana, so you start picking apart other games on the schedule where they could do it. Today is one of those games that could be had. I think another one of those games is Michigan State. If they don't get their offense going, I could see Illinois maybe putting a couple scores across. That might be enough against a team like Michigan State.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, Michigan State's offense has been a big point of concern for fans in East Lansing and across the Big Ten. But yeah, Nebraska today will be a good test. I think it'll be a high-scoring game for both sides, and whoever can get a key defensive stop will definitely have the upper hand.
Well, confidence is pretty high for this team right now, and I think that's a really good thing going into Big Ten play. Up next, huge favorites last week. They did even better than expected, at least according to the point spread. We'll look back at the Miami-Ohio game next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten Football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini, Big Ten Football. Illinois taking on Miami of Ohio last week, coming in as huge favorites, and no surprise, Miami came in the bottom 10% in just about every category on offense and defense, so we thought we might see a lot of people play, and we did get a lot of contributions from a big cast of characters Saturday as we look back at the game.
Dad's Day at Memorial Stadium. Cool moment before the game when the dads lined up in their sons' orange jerseys. Their younger versions came out of the tunnel.
Those dads out there today, that was unbelievable being able to run out there and see those jerseys.
Just to make their dads proud, the Illinois offense came out efficiently. A 9-play, 75-yard drive, ending in a touchdown. Floated to tight end Matt Lacoste. His first career score, it was 7-0 after a quarter. But what came next was a second quarter barrage. Just a minute and a half in, Nathan Shieldhouse to Evan Wilson in the back of the end zone. What a grab by Wilson. He just stays in for the score.
Thank goodness he's 6'7", got up. I thought he was going to hit his head on the upright. He got up so high.
You got a guy that's 6'7", able to go up and jump and get the ball like that. That's a big play for him.
After recovering an onside kick, something that was in the game plan, the Illini were right back at it. This time it was Josh Ferguson on the reception. And doing the rest himself, buckling knees on the Miami defense, he was in for the touchdown, 22-0 early in the second.
Got around the block, and I knew it was just me and that guy, and I had to beat him. And honestly, I didn't really think about it. Just kind of let the training take over and got by him.
The Illini stretched that to 43-0, thanks in large part to the play of their tight ends, John Davis contributing with 6 points. Lacoste had his second touchdown of the day, and the 6th touchdown by the Illinois offense came on the legs of freshman running back Devin Church. Church had 6 carries, including this 12-yard touchdown run. The Redhawks finally got on the board the third. Austin Boucher to Rakeem Williams. It was their first score in their last 10 quarters of football, but by then, it was way out of reach. Aaron Bailey finished off a Riley O'Toole drive with a 6-yard touchdown scamper. That finished off all scoring in an Illinois 50-14 victory. Big days all around. Shieldhouse set a career high with 5 touchdown passes. Ferguson moved into the team lead in receiving. And we got a good look at that Illinois depth in an ideal Saturday for Illinois football.
We got him in the football game. That's what it's about. It's about these players getting the opportunity to get in games.
I think the guys came out ready to roll, and that's what we need as offense. We talked about starting fast.
They're trying to give us exactly what we're demanding from them, and as long as they continue to do that, I believe we'll continue to get better.
Guys, I came up with a long list of positives from this game. A lot of storylines. Obviously, we got to see a lot of the backups get in there. And let's start with Nate Shieldhouse. The game he had, kind of a bounce-back game for him after Washington.
Yeah, no, Nate's definitely proving that last season was a fluke. He's become a pocket passer like Bill Cubitt once, and the numbers he's put up at Memorial Stadium this year are just incredible. He struggled up at Soldier Field against Washington, but here in Champaign he's been lights out, and maybe that'll continue today over in Lincoln at the other Memorial Stadium. But he's thrown to multiple receivers for every game, throwing the deep ball, throwing the screen passes. When Josh Ferguson gets out in the open field, he makes Nathan Shieldhouse look very good, but Nathan Shieldhouse has made himself look very good this year too.
Right.
I like the way he's spreading the ball around, and a lot of guys catching footballs. Josh Ferguson leads the nation in receiving yards by a running back, and they've got 2 of the top receivers in the Big Ten as far as yardage, and he's just getting it around. The running game still needs to come a little bit, I think, and we'll have to once you get into Big Ten play, but he's off to a great start.
Yeah, I think I like the way he's distributing the ball. His accuracy's good. I think, the Washington game, the tone of that could have changed early had Steve Hull caught that ball. And I don't want to put too much on Steve, but that was a good throw by Nate where it needed to be in a situation like that ahead of the quarterback there. Let's talk about the Josh Ferguson. The year he's putting together, both rushing and receiving. He's the leading receiver. Yards per catch is the highest on the team of people who've had more than one catch.
Yeah, he's also leading the country right now in terms of receiving yards for a running back, and I just think that goes to show how Josh Ferguson can play when he's healthy. Injuries have kind of been the detriment to him throughout his career so far, but you get him the ball outside the tackles, and he's just bound to make something happen like he did numerous times against Miami of Ohio. I had numerous fans come up to me and just point out the moves that he's making and kind of the high-stepping, things like that, and Bill Cubitt really is excited about what he can do.
Bad news about that is he's not going to sneak up on anybody anymore. He's definitely in the scouting report for Nebraska and the folks down the schedule as well. But he does bring an element that Illinois hasn't had lately.
Like you said, the unofficial mayor of the city of Champaign, Bill Cubitt, he pulled out his bag of tricks. They had the onside kick. And then there was one moment, I want to know what was going through your guys' heads when you saw Riley O'Toole and Aaron Bailey come out in the same offensive play.
I was wondering who was going to throw the ball to who. Obviously, Aaron Bailey threw that lateral pass back to Riley, who then kind of showed off his mini athleticism, I guess you could call it, and threw about an 8-yard pass to Spencer Harris. But Bill Cubitt's not shy about throwing anything at opponents. He likes to kind of have opponents guessing as to what they'll do, and I think that was kind of the plan with the Miami game, is just to throw everything out there so Nebraska really isn't sure what they're going to get today.
Good plan.
Evan Wilson might have said it best. Evan Wilson, of course, caught a touchdown pass, one of the 4 TD passes to tight ends. He said this week that Bill Cubitt is like a mad scientist. He's kind of in there mixing up different things. He's got that what appears to be a bottomless bag of tricks.
Yeah, we've seen them win in different ways, and you mentioned the tight ends. 4 tight ends accounted for 6 catches. 4 of those were touchdowns. I should say 3 tight ends, 82 yards, 2 more points on a 2-point conversion. Talk about getting the tight ends involved and kind of having a new strength for this offense.
Yeah, and I talked to Matt Lacoste about it this week too, and he's coming off a big game against Miami, and they all kind of present different options. Matt Lacoste is kind of the athletic guy. Evan Wilson's the big physical presence. He's listed at 6'6". Tim Beckman keeps saying he's 6'7", so maybe somewhere in between. And John Davis is kind of that. Exactly. And John Davis is kind of that in between, can kind of do multiple things. So they definitely have a lot of options, and they're not afraid to use all 3 of them.
Whatever Evan Wilson's height really is, he needed all of it
Yes.
to catch that ball at the back of the end zone. Shieldhouse threw that where only he could get it.
Right, and that was all part of the plan, as Coach Cuban said. I don't care if he's covered, just throw it as deep as you can. Well, interesting also, we saw Aaron Bailey play. We got the question asked last week, would he throw the ball? He was 1 of 3. He passed the ball. He didn't look too bad either in a couple of series there. Well, light week in the Big Ten last week, and there were just 4 games, including a game including the game we just talked about. We'll also talk about the Ohio State-Wisconsin game and what's next for both of those teams next.
The Inside the Illini Weekly MVP highlights the top playmaker for the Illinois football team from the previous game, and suddenly he's becoming the most versatile offensive weapon for the Illini. In barely more than a half of play, sophomore running back Josh Ferguson had 71 yards rushing to go with 77 yards receiving. He now leads the Illini in catches and receiving yards. Look for more on Ferguson in our Inside the Illini Spotlight later in the show.
Welcome back to Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana for Inside the Illini Big Ten football. Here we are, start of the Big Ten season. For those who haven't already played a Big Ten game, but one of those was Ohio State, Wisconsin. We turn to WAND's Eric Harold to give us the highlights.
Thank you, Matt. Leaders Division NIU at Purdue. Purdue gets a big play out of Akeem Hunt, takes a screen pass into the open field along the sideline, breaks an arm tackle, takes it into the end zone. Purdue up 7-3, but NIU would answer. Jordan Lynch fakes a handoff, throws down the right sideline to Deron Brown, 15-yard touchdown. Jordan Lynch not done. 4 yards out, fakes a handoff, throws it for the end zone, touchdown NIU. Shades 2009 when NIU upset Purdue in West Lafayette. Would history repeat itself? Yes, it would. Jordan Lynch on 4th and 1 passes to Tim Semish. Touchdown NIU, and they defeat Purdue 55-24. NIU, the first MAC team to beat 2 Big Ten teams in one season. Number 4, Ohio State taking on Whiskey. Big time matchup. Braxton Miller rolls left, throws down the field to Evan Spencer. Touchdown Ohio State. They strike first. They lead 7-0. Wisconsin would answer. Joel Stave looks down the field right side. Jared Aberderis makes a tough catch. Coverage can't get any better than that, but Aberderis makes the catch and the touchdown. Tied at 7. But this game belonged to Ohio State as Miller rifles it into Philly Brown. Ohio State beats Whiskey 31-24. Rounding out the Leaders Division, 2 teams had byes last week, and this week they play each other. Penn State will travel to Indiana to take on the Hoosiers later today. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
For the purposes of discussion, let's start with the Wisconsin-Ohio State game. OSU finally getting a nice big win there. And the quarterback controversy that people were trying to make with Kenny Guyton, I think Braxton Miller showed this is still my team to QB.
Urban Meyer has 2 really good quarterbacks.
I know, that doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't. But yeah, Braxton Miller definitely showed he's capable of what he's producing. I think 4 touchdown passes against Wisconsin in a primetime atmosphere. I mean, probably the entire state of Ohio was in Columbus last week, at least it seemed. Even LeBron James took in the game.
Biggest crowd ever at the shoot, right?
But, Ohio State's definitely the team to beat right now in the Big Ten. They're, still in the running for a national title, and Urban Meyer just can't seem to do anything wrong on the field, at least in Columbus. I know there's detractors for what's happened off the field there during his tenure, but he's got the Buckeyes rolling for sure.
Ohio State really explosive offensively. I'm a little concerned about their defense when you start talking about are they a national championship caliber team, but they can get the ball up and down the field. Braxton Miller showed no rust whatsoever from missing a couple of games, and like you said, Matt, nice problem to have if he does need a series off. You got Kenny Guyton, who has 12 touchdown passes on the season to bring in.
Well, you mentioned Ohio State's defense. You got to give them credit because I think their biggest victory of the game was really shutting down Wisconsin's running game. Melvin Gordon had just 74 yards. James White had 31 yards. Those guys are averaging 100 yards per game carrying the ball. So they were pretty effective there as well. And, I think maybe that gave them a lot of confidence because it doesn't get any easier. They travel to Northwestern. What are your original starting thoughts on that game?
It's going to be a great proving game for Pat Fitzgerald and his Wildcats. Having the game in Evanston, maybe there'll be a lot more Northwestern fans than Ohio State fans, which will remain to be seen at all. But College Game Day is there right now up in Evanston, and they're excited about Northwestern football. And Pat Fitzgerald has got that program just humming along in the right direction.
I don't know how many tickets Northwestern fans bought, but Ohio State bought the rest of them.
Yeah.
If it wasn't sold out, it is now. The Ohio State fans really travel. The thing about Ohio State football, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, or maybe 100,000 people that can't see Ohio State football in Columbus.
Right.
They can buy tickets to come to Illinois or Northwestern or Purdue or Indiana, and they do that. They'll scoop them up.
Those are tight quarters there up in Evanston too. So if you get enough Ohio State fans there, that could be a tough atmosphere for Northwestern. We'll talk about that game a little bit later. Well, let's talk about the only other leaders game that was going on: Northern Illinois and Purdue. Northern Illinois, I know one of those teams that's hanging around the top 25, just on the outside, but they smacked around the Boilermakers.
I think that's going to be a common sight in West Lafayette this year. Darrell Hazel's definitely got an uphill job, and I think some folks in West Lafayette might be regretting letting Danny Hope go. He didn't have that program, contending for Big Ten titles, but they were, hovering right around 500. Purdue's going to be nowhere close to getting to 500 this year. There's a lot of problems there. You could point at any aspect on that team, and there's plenty of work to do. So Purdue right now is definitely in the doghouse in the Big Ten.
I think most of us thought that NIU would win that game at West Lafayette, but I think what really has happened, the way Iowa started to play, that makes the NIU win over them look even better.
Yeah, I think so. And Purdue, illegal shift penalties, illegal formations, things they just don't have it figured out. The communication breakdowns on offense are just too much to overcome. Well, the schedule was even slimmer for the Legends division. In fact, just one game, it was Iowa, Minnesota. We'll take a look at that one next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten Football.
The Inside the Illini Play of the Week is sponsored by your local Anheuser-Busch distributor, Skef Distributing. The second touchdown of the game for Illinois, Nathan Shieldhouse with a high bullet to tight end Evan Wilson, using every inch he had and keeping the awareness with his feet, staying in for the touchdown.
He got up. I thought he was going to hit his head on the upright. He got up so high.
You got a guy that's 6'7", able to go up and jump and get the ball like that. That's a big play for him.
Welcome back to the show. Getting into the Big Ten Legends division now, just one game, and one game I think we all picked incorrectly on this show last week. Eric Harold lends his voice once again as we take a look back at the highlights in the Legends.
Thank you, Matt. Legends division. The best matchup, the only matchup of this week, Iowa, Minnesota. Floyd of Rosedale at stake. This is a rivalry game. Jake Rudock looks right, finds some running room, squeaks it into the corner of the end zone. Touchdown Hawkeyes. They're up 10-0 early. Philip Nelson would try to fix that, but he tried a little too hard there as Christian Kirksey picks it off. Iowa having their way with Minnesota early, and that would continue into the second quarter as DeMond Powell takes a screen pass, gets tons of blocking, breaks into the open field, uses that speed, burns down the field 74 yards for the touchdown. Iowa up 17-0. Hawkeyes feeling it, ready to bring Floyd home. Minnesota would be on life support in the fourth quarter. 4th and 5 here. Nelson looks to the middle of the field, picked off by James Morris. That would finish off the Golden Gophers as Iowa wins 23-7. Iowa making room on the bus for a bronze pig as they take home the rivalry game trophy. And the rest of the Legends division was dormant this past week, but number 19 Michigan returns to action later today, taking on the Golden Gophers coming off of that loss to Iowa. Number 16 Northwestern has a tough matchup, maybe the best matchup of the week, as they take on number 4 Ohio State. Michigan State takes on Iowa. They're coming off of that win over the Golden Gophers. And Nebraska takes on Illinois later today. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
Okay, the one game to talk about that happened last week, and we'll get to this week's schedule a little bit as well, but Iowa, Minnesota, I think, that game was nearly a pick'em game. It was pretty close in terms of predictions before we went into it, but Minnesota sure didn't look good, and they couldn't run the ball either.
No, and that was a big, sticking point leading up to kind of their matchup last week with the Hawkeyes, is they were able to run the ball both out of the quarterback position and the running back position, and Iowa just stifled that aspect of their game. And Iowa, it seems they found a quarterback too in Jake Ruddock, and he's kind of, filled that void that Kirk Ferentz is kind of looking for. And 4-1 start for Iowa. That's quite a dramatic improvement based on last year. Now, obviously, there's a long way to go with that, but winning on the road in Minneapolis is a good step in the right direction for the Hawkeyes.
We've seen Minnesota do this before. They've played well in the non-conference season and stumbled a bit once the Big Ten starts. They don't have the corner on that. It happens to a lot of teams, but I really thought Minnesota would win the game at home. So I'm a little bit more impressed with Iowa than I was going into last week.
Iowa outgained them 464 to 165. That was a huge yardage difference, and like we said, a lot of that had to do with the fact that they just couldn't get the run game going. Iowa hosts Michigan State this week. Suddenly, that game looks a whole lot more interesting in terms of the matchup.
No, it does. Michigan State, like we mentioned earlier, their struggles on offense are a key point for them. But Iowa, I'd say, has to go into that game with a boatload of confidence, especially after what they did against Minnesota. But Michigan State definitely needs to show some improvement on the offensive side of the ball.
I think Iowa gets Michigan State. That game's in Iowa City. I think they'll go to 2-0 in the Big Ten.
And another Legends game, Minnesota, after that game, gets to go to Michigan and play them. They can't be feeling as good as Iowa does right now.
No, but Michigan, they've shown some weakness. almost losing at UConn a few weeks ago, and Devin Gardner's just kind of been up and down. When he's good, he's great. When he's bad, he's really bad.
Right.
But Michigan, would obviously be the favorite in that game. And if Minnesota is able to win that game, that's definitely a big confidence boost for Jerry Kill and his team.
We talked a little bit about Ohio State, Northwestern in the last segments. Let's talk about, there's one more Big Ten game going on, Penn State at Indiana. Another interesting one, and another one that's kind of picked to be a closer game. I don't know if it feels that way, but what are your thoughts on Penn State, Indiana?
Penn State has obviously shown that with Christian Hackenberg at quarterback, that he's kind of the quarterback of the future for Bill O'Brien's system. And Indiana, they can put up the points. The question with them is, can they stop anyone? It's almost like Illinois in the sense, can their defenses hold anyone to under 40 points or anything like that? But Penn State, I think, is still, they haven't felt the total weight of all the NCAA penalties so far. So I think the Nittany Lions come out on top in that one.
I agree with that. Indiana has proven, as you mentioned, Matt, that they can put points on the board. I don't know if we know enough about Penn State. I keep going back to the fact that Central Florida went into Happy Valley and beat Penn State. Central Florida's a pretty good ball club. I don't want to take anything away from them, but it makes me not sure about Penn State, but I think they'll go to Bloomington and win.
Any big surprises from the non-conference season, or from what's been mostly the non-conference season in the Big Ten?
Illinois, I think, is the surprise of the Big Ten. I don't think anyone could have foreseen, the 3-1 record. If they, able to convert some more against Washington, you might be talking about a 4-0 Illinois team right now. So I'd have to say, Illinois is kind of the surprise of the Big Ten at the moment.
I think some of the folks in Lincoln agree with you. They say Illinois is a decent team this year. That might affect the Taylor Martinez decision. We'll actually talk about that a little bit later. Well, we do take a look at the NFL each week. We were joking. I talk about my Seahawks a lot. I got to watch the Texans. There's this kid named Whitney Merciless who was involved everywhere. Other Illini players in the NFL that made impacts here in Week 4 of the NFL season. Plus, our Inside the Illini Spotlight takes a look at Josh Ferguson next. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten Football. We are a third of the way through the season, and the top receiver on the Illini football team is a running back. That may be mostly a product of Bill Cubitt's scheme, but what Josh Ferguson has been able to do with that scheme is something worth noting. That's why our WAND's Noah Newman takes a look at our Inside the Illini Spotlight with Josh Ferguson.
In high school, Josh Ferguson was one of the most explosive runners in all of Illinois, leading Joliet Catholic to the state title game in 2009. Well, now as a redshirt sophomore in college, he's showing everyone that his pass-catching ability just might be as good as his running ability.
Going into the season, I knew I was going to catch a lot, so that was the focus this summer as well as running.
Through 4 games, Ferguson's hauled in 12 catches for 262 yards. That not only leads the team, but for a running back, it leads the nation.
It's been fun, man. It's been an enjoyable time. Starting this summer, we knew we were going to be able to do a lot of things with a lot of people. So heading into the season, we're excited about that, and it's manifested into something good.
Ferguson's a big reason why the Illini have scored a school record 161 points over their first 4 games. Offensive coordinator Bill Cubitt calls him the difference maker.
When you get the ball in his hands, he can make people miss. And you got to have one of those guys, or again, it's hard to keep driving 80 yards and not have any big plays. And he's one of the guys that when you get the ball in his hands, you're expecting big plays all the time.
You want to get the ball in his hands and give him a chance to make plays. So he's done a great job of taking advantage of the opportunity that he's been given, and it's nice to see him rolling at full speed.
This summer, I just wanted to work hard, and coaches see those things, and this camp was a great camp. We worked on some things, Coach Cubitt. So that's a relationship that I wanted to foster, and it has, and I'm excited.
Well, Ferguson definitely has been an impactful guy, and I said it when I was recapping the game on our news last Saturday. Just loved the way he scored that touchdown, the way he kind of slowed down. You could see his feet kind of go up and, just buckled the knees of the defenders there. What have you seen from Ferguson this year?
He, like you said, he's been able to just kind of leave defenders in their wake with his versatile moves. Like he did against Miami of Ohio, just with the juking and the jiving and the spin moves he showed at times. And Illinois hasn't had a running back lead them in receiving since Robert Holcomb in 1997, that forgettable 0-11 season in Ron Turner's first year. But Holcomb only had 277 receiving yards that year. Ferguson will probably top that today on his first screen pass he gets from Nate Shieldhouse. It seems, every time Shieldhouse gets him the ball in his hands, he's bound to break a 25-yard runner. He showed, in the Cincinnati game too, with kind of catching the deep pass for that touchdown as well. So he's a versatile option that Bill Cubitt doesn't want to wear out on the field necessarily. He doesn't have, the big body type that he can take the ball 30 times or so. But he's definitely a playmaker, and they want to utilize him in every way they can.
A couple of times he was channeling his inner Barry Sanders, I think, on some of those moves out in the open field. He's, as you guys mentioned, very versatile guy, and a guy that will figure more prominently, I think, in the Illinois offense as we move along. You mentioned Robert Holcomb. Back in that year, they were either handing it off to him or throwing a little quick screen pass to him. He was virtually all the offense during that forgettable year, as you mentioned.
And it's not just the catching, it is the running, because I think what set up that touchdown catch and run that he had was a first down run where he spun away from what looked like a sure tackle. Mm-hmm. So he's doing a little bit of everything. Quiet guy, though. No, kind of an unassuming guy. That's an understatement.
No, he doesn't want the spotlight necessarily, but teammates are happy to talk about him. I know Corey Lewis is a close friend of his, and he's just been overwhelmed and impressed with just the capabilities that Josh Ferguson has shown this year.
Very quiet guy, as you mentioned, but very respectful. Good, interesting guy to talk to.
Yep, interesting to watch for the next 8 games for sure. Well, a quarter of the NFL season is done. We're going to toss it to the WAMD studios with Elise Medeker for Illini in the Pros.
Thanks, Matt. Illini in the Pros is brought to you by O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana. We're celebrating sacks this week for former Illini, leaving their mark on NFL quarterbacks, and a couple of other noteworthy performances we'll touch on. Let's start out with Houston Texans taking on your Seattle Seahawks, Matt. Whitney Merciless tallied a career-high 6 tackles and 2.5 sacks. The Seahawks, though, almost giving Loveless a heart attack and taking this one in overtime. In San Diego, Chargers' Corey Liuget helped hand the Cowboys their second loss of the season. Liuget breaks through the O-line here with his first sack of the season, good for an 8-yard loss. He also had a season-high 5 tackles.
With the pressure.
Also making his first sack of the season on the big stage, Saints linebacker Martez Wilson in Monday night's matchup against the Dolphins. That's the 5th sack in the linebacker's NFL career. And New England Patriots' Michael Buchanan up against Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons. Buchanan with 2 tackles and, of course, a sack in the 4th quarter at 3rd and 5 for a 9-yard loss. Also worth mentioning, cornerback Vontae Davis and the Indianapolis Colts atop the AFC South against bottom of the division Jacksonville Jaguars. Davis, 3 tackles, 2 pass deflections, and his first interception of the season. And in Tennessee, Jets tight end Jeff Cumberland with a 34-yard touchdown catch from quarterback Geno Smith.
Cumberland for the touchdown.
The effort wouldn't be enough, though.
When you have penalties or you turn the ball over, because you're not giving yourself a chance. I mean, when we did have good runs and we was moving the ball, It was a penalty to take us back.
Jets fall short 38-13. Looking ahead, offensive tackle David Deal is on his way back from a thumb injury. He participated in Giants practice and suited up for Sunday's game. He should be ready tomorrow against the Eagles. I'm Elise Menaker for Inside the Illini.
Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten football. Time to go inside the Panthers, where Eastern Illinois is continuing to progress each week. Jimmy Garoppolo, the quarterback, was named Conference Player of the Week for the 4th week in a row. Plus, they're a top 5 team now. Hardly seems fair. We go inside the Panthers with Eastern Illinois University.
O'Brien Field in Charleston was filled to capacity as the 7th largest crowd to view an Eastern Illinois football game was on hand for EIU's OVC opener against Eastern Kentucky. The Panthers and Colonels were picked as preseason number 1 and number 2 in the OVC, but the showdown between EIU and EKU would not be close as the Panthers scored first on a record-breaking touchdown.
Out of the shotgun, Garoppolo rolling out to his right. Pump fake, sets up, looking, throwing the bomb, going for Gober, back of the end zone. Touchdown, Eastern Illinois. Gober in the back corner behind 2 defenders. Jimmy Garoppolo sets the record for Eastern Illinois and the Ohio Valley Conference with his 86th career touchdown pass, wiping Tony Romo's name out of the record book.
Garoppolo would also become the EIU and OVC all-time leader in passing yards. EIU had no trouble finding the end zone in the first half, scoring 4 touchdowns in the second quarter to take a 35-0 lead at halftime.
He got grabbed by Delphon and broke away till 25, still being grabbed and breaking away, and they finally get him down and fumble. Penalty flag. Eastern picks up the fumble, and they're on their way for a touchdown. It's Anthony Goodman who picks the fumble out of the air, and he takes it all the way back for a touchdown.
The Panthers go on to win 42-7. Head coach Dino Babers was impressed with the Panther defense, which held the Colonels to 266 yards of total offense.
I'm really happy with the performance. 7 points, and really a shutout by the starting defense is the way it should be printed in the newspapers. Okay, a shutout by the starting defense, and then 7 points by our 2s and 3s, and then 35 points by our offense, 24 points I believe last year. That's a good outing versus a good football team.
Eastern Kentucky is a huge game for us. It's like a little in-conference rival that we have, and they like to run the ball. That's what they do. They run power. So, and that's, as a defense, we love to play teams like that. We like to stop the run, and that's what we did today.
Northern loss still hurts, but I mean this helps it out a little bit, and let's just forget about that a little bit. But I mean it's still in the back of our head. I mean we'd love to be perfect right now, perfect 5-0, but it is what it is. And we got a bye week coming up, get some people healthy, get bodies back to normal, and then we got Austin Peay after that on a short week. So we'll be ready for them and just continue our run in the conference.
EIU now 4-1 on the season and 1-0 in the OVC, moved up to number 5 in the latest Sports Network and FCS coaches polls. The Panthers have this week off and will return to action Thursday, October 10th at Austin Peay. EIU's number 5 ranking is their highest since 2002. Reporting on the Eastern Illinois Panthers for Inside the Illini, I'm Brad Kupiak for WEIU.
And thanks as always to Eastern for that report. A bye week this week, but they play Austin Peay on Thursday, a Thursday evening game at 6 Central Time. Next up, our pick'em. We'll look at some of the big matchups across college football. The close ones are in the Big Ten, so we'll make our picks there. Plus, we go to Facebook, answer your questions about the Illini. That's next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten football. Time to take a look at our picks. Another not bad week for all of us last week, but we're still all chasing the News Gazette representation. Lauren Tate keeps winning his games out of spite.
That's what we do over there.
But you've just been picking like a pro here.
I try. I got to kind of keep up the legacy over there.
They've got us outnumbered, though. They got two.
That's right. That's all Lauren.
Two brains are better than
that's
one.
All Lauren and I do all week is prepare for this moment right here.
That's right. Well, I looked at the matchups, and I like to find games that are going to be close, within a field goal maybe. All those games were Big Ten games this week. A lot of interesting matchups. Let's just go ahead and start with the big one, College Game Days there, Ohio State at Northwestern. Your thoughts?
Buckeyes are going to roll in that one. I think it's going to be close for a half, but I think Ohio State's got too much talent. Northwestern's got some, question marks on defense. I think it'll, be a close game for the first quarter and a half or so. That I think Buckeyes are going to roll away and win by about 2 or 3 touchdowns, possibly.
I don't know if I could say it any better than that. I totally agree with Ohio State going in there and winning. It's a big opportunity for Northwestern on the national stage, but Ohio State's got too much.
I didn't prepare many notes for this segment, so these are my gut picks.
Okay.
And the gut just tells me Ohio State. I have to agree with you guys there. Michigan State at Iowa.
I think I'm going to go with Michigan State. I know Iowa's coming off a win at Minnesota, and Michigan State had the bye week, and a lot to think about after that, very dismal offensive showing at Notre Dame. But I just think Mark D'Antonio's defense is too much. It's going to be one of those slobber knockers, 9-7, 10-6, something like that in that game.
Slobber knocker. I like that. I'm going to go with Iowa in the slobber knocker, and for the Hawkeyes to win at home.
I'm going Michigan State. I agree with Matt here. Once again, gut pick. A win over Minnesota doesn't convince me that Iowa's good enough to push the ball against Michigan State's defense. Penn State at Indiana, our last game. Go.
I'm going to go with Penn State. Christian Hackenberg's put up impressive numbers all year. Indiana's defense can't stop Tom Crean's offense probably, so we'll go with Penn State.
I agree. Penn State wins at Bloomington.
I agree as well. Penn State will win that game. Penn State's still a formidable opponent, I think. Well, here's the part where we give away a $25 gift card to this wonderful establishment, Hickory River Smokehouse here in Urbana. And we go to Facebook to answer your questions. And this week, a question from Brady. We touched on it maybe from a different angle earlier, but we'll hit it here. With a 3-1 conference record and non-conference play, with their only loss being to a solid Washington team, what are the expectations for Big Ten play? We tried to dig for 3 wins earlier, but what are your expectations? What do you think of Seton State?
I think Illinois needs to, their expectations are to at least go 3-5. 3-5 record gets them into a bowl game. 4-4 in the Big Ten would be a dramatic improvement, especially for a team that's heading into today's game on a 14-game Big Ten losing streak. That none of the players, none of the coaches, they want to move forward. It's in the past. They've got the company line down pretty solid. So, 3-5 record in the Big Ten would exceed any and all expectations.
I agree. And nobody was really, as Matt said, nobody was talking about the 14-game losing streak, but it's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows that it's out there, and there is hope. I think they could get 3 Big Ten wins and get to that bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I think from what we saw on the beginning of Brady's question there is with the 3-1 record and how they came about that. Right. We're a little more confident that this team is going to compete better, and even maybe some of the games that they lost. Last year they just didn't compete. Even in a conference game they lost by 3, they just weren't in the game until the very end of it. So I think this team they'll have expectations to win a couple of conference games, and I don't think it's out of reach for us to expect that as well. Right. Well, be sure to go onto our Facebook page, like the Inside the Illini Facebook page, ask us a question. You'll have the chance to win a $25 gift card, and your name said by Matt Daniels. And Steve Kelly.
And Matt Lovelace.
Is there a better honor than that? Well, coming up next, the Illini do begin Big Ten play. A tough road test here. They play Nebraska, but as we talked about earlier, can this Nebraska team be had today? We'll discuss that next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. Welcome back to Inside the Illini Big Ten football. Our final segment here, this 3-1 start for Illinois, has definitely been a confidence booster, but a little reality check today. A subject, like we said, the Illini don't want to talk about, but a 14-game conference losing streak for Illinois. Is that going to get a little bit longer today or come to an end? We'll scout the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
You could argue no single player is the identity of his team in the Big Ten as much as Taylor Martinez is to the Huskers, a fifth-year senior that's endured turmoil, criticism, praise, success, and failure. Now a rock-solid foundation for this offense when healthy.
I think he's just a leader. I think he does. He can run. He's throwing the ball extremely well, I thought.
Being a senior who's played a lot of football, he's extremely comfortable right now, and it shows. He's making a ton of plays.
Healthy is the key, though, and right now Martinez is not. He missed their game against South Dakota State 2 weeks ago with turf toe. His return was questionable this week. The Illini can't afford not to prepare for the dual-threat QB.
You got to account for his passing ability while still account for his running ability, and that could be hard. You need a 12th defender.
His backups, freshman Tommy Armstrong Jr. and Ron Kellogg III, combined to complete 83% of their passes in that game 2 weeks ago for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Whoever's going to be at quarterback has been around that offense.
The 3 serviceable QBs, though, aren't necessarily the issue. The Huskers are a top 15 running team. Amir Abdullah leading the rushing attack with more than 100 yards a game. The Huskers score seemingly at will. To a degree, so do their opponents, which is why the Illini are preparing for a shootout in hostile territory.
There'll be enough electricity in that stadium that everybody will be ready to go.
It's part of playing in the Big Ten. You get the greatest opportunity to play in outstanding atmospheres that you can talk about for the rest of your life.
We were talking about it earlier in the show, the 14-game conference losing streak. Only a couple of teams have had longer conference losing streaks. It is an elephant in the room because, it's kind of the beaten dog syndrome. How long can you take that without losing a little bit of confidence? How do you think Illinois feels? You talk to them just about every day. How do you think they feel going into this season?
Well, their confidence level is at an all-time high right now compared to what it was last year before the season started. They don't like talking about the conference losing streak. Corey Lewis mentioned to me this week that at next week's media session he hopes that he's not answering that question anymore, but he understands why it's being asked, and as do a lot of the players too. The consensus among the team, if you talk to Nate Shieldhouse and Matt Lacoste and Jonathan Brown, is they don't think about it. Jonathan Brown mentioned to me a couple weeks ago that he only thinks about it when us, the media, ask him about it. But the players, they'd be lying to you if they said that they didn't want it to end. They know it's kind of an embarrassing stat to have for the program, so they want to do everything in their power to stop it. It might stop today, who knows, but it's definitely one thing that they want to curtail this season.
How much of a burden do you think that is?
I don't know that it's much of a burden because a lot of the young guys weren't really part of it. They might have been around last year, but on the other hand, there are some guys that were there 2 years ago when they won their first 6 games, then lost their last 6 to get this losing streak started. So I don't think it's a burden. I kind of believe them when they say they're looking ahead. You can't look back in most things in life, so I think they've got the right perspective going in.
Well, a big way they'll break this streak is based on their opponents. So let's talk about Nebraska a little bit. And full disclosure, we do tape the show early in the week. Obviously, the 3 of us are in Lincoln for this game.
We did time travel.
Yeah, exactly. So at the point of this taping, the questions about Taylor Martinez being the starting quarterback, not quite there yet. It feels early in the week like they're leaning toward not playing him. What do you think about that?
Tim Beckman addressed it Monday in his weekly press conference. He anticipates Taylor Martinez playing. It's something that Bo Pelini will have decided upon, by the time kickoff arrives on Saturday. But if he does or doesn't play, they have 2 proven backups that, they went against South Dakota State 2 weeks ago, and mind you, it's an FCS team, but they directed the offense and led the offense. I think if Taylor Martinez doesn't play, they still have plenty of options on offense. Amir Abdullah is that classic eye back that the Cornhuskers always have. Kenny Bell not only has an impressive afro, he's got an impressive skill set as wide receiver and a kick returner. So Illinois' defense will have plenty of options to worry about, even if Taylor Martinez can't go.
Martinez, if he does play, provides a lot of potential problems, especially with his feet. He's not a great passer, but he can get out and run, and he and Nathan Shieldhouse are similar in many ways. Shieldhouse not the runner so far this year that he has been. Both those guys are 50-year guys. They've been around a while. They've had some ups and downs. They've kind of fought through things, and we'll wait and see if he plays today.
Yeah, Nate and Taylor are a couple of the elder statesmen in the Big Ten this year, and that's good for both teams' offenses. I look at Nebraska's defense. I see a team that's 10th in scoring defense, 12th in total defense. They've given up yards, they've given up points. Meanwhile, the Illini have found a way to score points in this new scheme. My opinion would be that if Taylor Martinez doesn't play, or if a couple things go wrong for them offensively, Illinois could be in this game late.
I think it's going to be a game that will still, the outcome won't be decided until when the fourth quarter starts. I think I predicted 48-34. I think it's going to be a classic shootout now. The weather might play into that a little bit well. Kickoff temperatures are supposed to be in the high 40s. First kind of into the wind might be a factor too, so that might limit some of the scoring role. It's the first, cold football game per se for Illinois this year. But I think it's going to be a game that Nebraska and Illinois keep close all the way until the end probably.
Both good offenses, both with 40-plus points a game. Is going to be whichever defense steps up and makes the big plays.
Were you born the last time this game was played, Illinois-Nebraska?
I might have been 6 months old, I think.
I was a year and a half old.
Thanks, guys.
Steve was 60. No, I'm kidding, Steve. Well, the game's coming up here in a few minutes. 11 o'clock, be sure to catch the coverage in the News Gazette and follow Matt on Twitter. He's the best Illinois tweeter we got. Steve Kelly on Sports Talk 1400, and I'll be covering the game on WAND TV. Thanks for watching. For Steve, for Matt, I'm Matt Lovelace. Go Illini.
Thank you for watching Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football, brought to you by your local Anheuser-Busch distributors, O'Brien Auto Park of Urbana, Hickory River Smokehouse in Urbana, and WAND.